We're not just running a cottage industry anymore. The housing market and the wider property investment market in New Zealand is a much more professional affair than I think we give it credit for. This analysis is showing that we are seeing a greater concentration, particularly in urban centres, with larger numbers of property investors with larger holdings of properties. That skew towards the larger end means that you do have a concentration effect where there is a more limited number of people controlling a much larger proportion of New Zealand's housing stock, of the number of houses in these urban centres. We are seeing that rising concern that as that concentration grows, you've got a larger number of investors looking after an increasingly large amount of the housing stock, that you have this big divergence that emerges in society. One group, the haves with all of the houses, and the other group, the have-nots, who find it really difficult to get into housing. Their pathway to ownership is substantially reduced, and you have this driving wedge between those two groups as we see those concentrations in the market. Those wealth disparities, those wealth divides, means that we are going to create two classes of New Zealanders. We do need to start challenging this assumption in New Zealand that our property market is being focused on mum and dad investors. Increasingly, people are holding larger and larger property portfolios, and that means that you're getting more professional style investors with a larger number of homes, perhaps 6 and above. That's not mum and dad investment anymore, that's a lot more serious. And at that more serious end of the market, we're also starting to see that ability to influence a much larger number of people's lives with the decisions that some of these property investors are making. Overall, that concentration of housing wealth and also housing control is something that New Zealand needs to keep a keen focus on. As we start to see this trend towards a greater level of inheritance being handed down, that inheritance focus is again going to drive that wedge between the haves and the have-nots even larger. Some people will have the ability for their parents or their grandparents to pass down housing. Others who didn't have housing to start with will be increasingly locked out of New Zealand's property market because of that hand-down effect or the lack thereof. At the moment, we're starting to see more progress to getting us on the right track of a better housing pathway for New Zealanders, but we're very much at the start of that path, the start of the marathon, nowhere near the end yet. We've got to continue to focus on increasing supply and increasing choices for New Zealanders to look at when they come to look for property. This is the roof that people are looking to keep over their head. If we get that wrong, if we focus too much on the financial only side, we have a short-term gain with an extended long-term pain.